News and information. Views and conversation. News Radio 740 KTRH.
Gordon Quan, immigration attorney in Houston, joining us here this morning. And it doesn't have to be heated or, it can be like two gentlemen just enjoying a political discussion. So let's do that. Former Mexican ambassador to the United States says there are 30 million illegals in the U.S. He kind of threw that number out, surprised a lot of people because we believe there's somewhere between 11 and 13 million illegals. Do we know, Gordon? I mean, do we really know how many there are?
People are not just raising their hand and say, hey, count me, I'm illegal. So I think that any number can be picked out of the air. I mean, we look at the census figures, we look at the Pew Hispanic Survey, and, we've been stuck at 11 million for a long time. Where he got 30 million, I have no clue.
Yeah, and then, but what was interesting is he was kind of asked about it again, and he said, no, there's 11.3 million. So I'm not sure what he was talking about, but you're right. I mean, let's make the point that we truly do not know how many are in this country illegally. Now, let's use that as a jump-off point to Donald Trump's immigration policy, which many are talking about. You and I were chatting about it off the air. He wants to, in his words, send back many of the illegals that are in this country. Now, I know you're on board with that, right? You like that idea?
Sounds like a plan, Matt. It only would cost estimated about $4 to $6 billion to kind of do that over the next 20 years. And, I don't know if the American people have the willpower to spend that money and to get rid of their help,
Now you're suggesting that all of these illegals are being used as help. I thought they were coming here to try and get a better life. I think what Trump is trying to do is to simply enforce the laws that we have on the books. With the wall, with the deportation, we're looking at somewhere around $130 billion. That's a lot of money, but we spend a lot more money on dumber things.
I think our laws, as they are somewhat archaic. We haven't seen a major change in immigration law in 25 years since President George H.W. Bush was president. And times have changed a lot in that time. There's been a lot of transportation, people going back and forth across the border. We live in a different economy than we did in 1990. And while I understand, let's enforce the law, but if the law is no longer serving our purpose, we need to look seriously at that law and see what we can do to make it more reasonable.
So are you suggesting that blanket amnesty is one of the changes that should be made in the law, that we should all of a sudden allow those that are in this country illegally, give them a pass of some sort?
Well, while President Reagan did that in the 80s,
didn't work.
I don't think it's going to be working today. And I think that more calmer heads have said, let's develop a path, a reasonable path that people can follow. We need to know who these people are. We need to make sure that they're paying their taxes.
And how do we do that, Gordon?
Them. Well, there was a plan that came out of the Senate in 2013 that had 67 votes. It wasn't a tight, by one vote passage.
But you couldn't get Democrats to even agree to vote on that.
No, the Democrats are on board with that one. But it was the
not in the House of Representatives. They weren't.
Well, the House, they never got a vote. It never came to vote. Boehner never brought it to the floor.
But when asked, Democrats were not on board. Many of the Democrats from southern states, and you're talking about the Gang of Eight, right?
I'm talking about the Gang of Eight. The Democrats are solid, and there were enough Republicans to pass it too. But Boehner would not put it on the table.
All right, look, let me take a quick break. I want to come back. Let's talk about the 14th Amendment,
okay,
because that's another big discussion that's going on, and I want to get your thoughts on that. 7:23, we're joined by Gordon Quan. He's an immigration attorney in Houston. Gordon, again, I thank you for your time. Let's talk a little bit about the 14th Amendment, because that's now come up. Birthright citizenship. You're born in the United States. You're a citizen of the United States. But was that amendment intended to cover those that were brought into this country or who came into this country illegally? I would say no, and there's many other people that are suggesting the same thing. You would say to that?
I would agree. Probably when they passed that amendment, it was after the Civil War. It was a question of whether the freed slaves were U.S. citizens, and Congress said, hey, if you're born in the United States, you should be considered an American citizen. That was, of course, tested in 1898 with the Wong Kim Ark case, when a Chinese person who had been born in the United States went back to China, tried to come back to the U.S., and they turned him away, saying, hey, wait a minute, we have a Chinese Exclusion Act. We can't let you in. He said, but I'm born in the United States. Went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, you're born in the United States, you're a U.S. citizen. Now, to overturn that, we're going to have a constitutional amendment that would go through the state process. You know how that goes. And that would take two-thirds of all the states to repeal that, as well as if the Supreme Court had another case and the rule opposite.
Is it time for the Supreme Court, do you think, to weigh in on whether or not illegals, people coming into this country illegal, then having babies here, are covered by the 14th Amendment? Is it time for the Supreme Court to make a decision?
Well, I think that probably, it may be time in that this is such a controversial area. What is the law of the land at this point? I think the Supreme Court's going to still affirm Wong and still say, born in the United States is what the Constitution says. Even Scalia, as a strict constructionist, I think, would come back and say, that's what it says. Unless you change the law, that's what it says.
Interesting. Rasmussen poll out 53% of those polled, and Republicans want to take a look at the 14th Amendment, and also are in favor of Trump's plan here of deportation. So it's and again, I said Republicans, so it's going to be interesting as we go forward. I think we're having these discussions. We've never really had them to the degree we're having them now. And I'm glad that you and I can kind of chat about it. We don't necessarily agree, but that's okay. It makes for interesting radio, my friend.
Well, I think, it shows the difference between running a business and running a government. People say, oh, I'm going to run the government like I ran my business. And I can see Donald Trump pushing some of these policies within the Trump organization. But trying to change a government that runs through a democratic system where you have voices from all sides making those decisions, it's not the same.
Indeed. And I've said that many times. All right. Thank you so much, Gordon. I appreciate your time this morning, as always.
Anytime, Matt. Have a great day.
You too.